All right, let's get the show on the road. I didn't do the recording. I just want to do the recording just so I know I am live at K Talk. I keep hearing these stories about how the show is being interrupted. Apparently, it was interrupted several times, something like that, during the program yesterday at K Talk, not at the stream. But I hear I hear more and more all the time. All right, welcome everybody to Global Affairs Unfiltered. I'm Jack Stockwell. It is the 16th day of December 2025. I hope I am broadcasting at K Talk. I was told by a patient yesterday, a very dear lady, a good friend, as well as a patient, who said that the show was interrupted several times at K Talk. I'd be there and I'd be gone. I'd be there and I'd be gone. But I'm looking at the recording going across the screen, and it looks like we're pretty solid. All right, a lot of things to go through today. What is going on? What is taking place in Australia behind this Bondi beach? Shooting is becoming more and more apparent all the time. I was suggesting yesterday. There's three different scenarios. One of which is to scare Jews worldwide to come back to Israel because the Jews are fleeing from Israel. They are having an emigration rate right now that's the largest in recent years. More and more Jews are leaving Israel because they see the writing on the wall. They know that their government wants to attack Iran. They know that Iran has thousands of missiles aimed at Israel, and most of these thousands of missiles will get through because they're hypersonics. And so the Jews are leaving in large numbers. Israelis are leaving. I suspect most of them are Jews. And so because of the depleted population, there's this talk out there on the internet. I don't know how true it is, but it makes sense, knowing how Netanyahu runs his government, that if they could sponsor a few of these things taking place around the world, where there are large Zionist populations, not just large Jewish populations, but Zionist Jews, can scare them to come back to Israel because they're not safe anywhere else in the world. That's one of the theories. The other theory, of course, is to strengthen the country's gun laws, which would insinuate that there was some government action going on behind this. And when you compare the shooting with a lot of the shootings that take place inside the United States, it's not all that hard to understand the intelligence network that is behind it, promoting it from start to finish. And then the third one is to enrage the Zionist Jews enough that because of some Iranian connection with one of the shooters, that Iran was behind this, and therefore Israel should go attack Iran. It's all a part of the game. It's all a part of the show. I hope you don't get too upset or worried or bothered by the whole thing. It's just part of the theater. Just to continue to enjoy it as to what's going on. So the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has vowed of Australia's prime minister, just vowed to strengthen the country's gun laws. And it's reportedly carried out by this father-son pair, Sajid Akram, 50 years old, and Naveed Akram, 24, the older gunman having held a gun license for a decade while legally owning, oh my goodness, 6 guns. Just craziness. Now, Albanese said this: the government is prepared to take whatever action is necessary, included in that need for tougher gun laws. And then other government leaders also proposed restricting gun ownership to Australian citizens. Nobody else can have a gun unless you're Australian. A measure which would have excluded the older one, who has been in Australia since 1998 on a student visa. Became a permanent resident after marrying a local woman who did not confirm what country he had migrated from in his wedding license applications. So the government leaders are proposing additional use of criminal intelligence in deciding who can obtain a firearms license, which could hypothetically have meant that the 2019 investigation into the son's suspicious associates would have disqualified the father from owning a gun. Just all of this, what it's coming down to is just setting the stage for some more draconian laws for Australian gun ownership, more control of the people, the population. As the Prime Minister is saying, what do you need these guns for if you're not a farmer? This is the New South Wales Premier, Christopher Minns, said that his state's gun laws are going to change. He did not outline how, but he said this: it means introducing a bill to Parliament. I mean, to be really blunt here, make it more difficult to get these horrifying weapons that have no practical use in our community. If you're not a farmer, you're not involved in agriculture. So why do you need these massive weapons that put the public in danger and make life dangerous and difficult for New South Wales police? Indeed. As though a farmer having to shoot wild pigs eating up his crops would be the only reason for a gun. Australia enacted this very all-compromising suite of strict gun laws roughly 2 weeks after that April 1996 massacre at Port Arthur in Tasmania, in which one man killed 35 people, wounded another 23, prompting the then Prime Minister John Howard to significantly strengthen the gun laws. And remember what happened then? This is 1996. Under the National Firearms Agreement. I remember talking about this. That was the beginning of my career at K-Talk. I was on the air first in March of 95, but by 96 I had the morning show, Monday through Friday. And I remember talking about this. And where under the National Firearms Agreement, gun ownership was explicitly made a privilege. 2 federally funded gun buybacks, voluntary surrenders led to the collection of more than 1 million firearms. Remember the pictures of all the shotguns and rifles and everything having their barrels cut off, and then the stock cut in half by these big diamond grinding wheels. And so in order to possess a firearm in Australia, after that, a person had to have a firearm license and demonstrate at least one genuine reason for ownership of a weapon in the country of Australia that did not include self-defense. So, self-defense was not a reason to have a firearm. You had to have some other reason. What other reason would there be? Well, hunting. And then that's a privilege. Gun ownership is certainly not a right. Here it is, thank goodness. But in Australia it isn't. Anyway, the current Prime Minister, Albanese, invoked this right-wing extremism talk during a press conference after this attack. And the journalist asked the Prime Minister this: Prime Minister, Mike Burgess warned you in February that anti-Semitism was the #1 threat to life. Is that still the case, and have you taken these threats seriously enough? And Acting Deputy Commissioner, if I may, it's my understanding that Sajid Akram moved to Australia in the late 90s. I believe from Pakistan. Is that correct? Prime Minister: on the latter, the minister will respond. But we take ASIO's advice very seriously. We work closely with them. We receive regular updates. The Director General of ASIO has warned about a range of threats, be it anti-Semitism, the rise of right-wing extremist groups as well, and we continue to work closely with our security agencies. I like how they put both of those terms in the same sentence: anti-Semitism, right-wing extremism. So more gun control. And they're on the lookout for anti-Semitism and right-wing extremists. after the terrorist attack. It's just too convenient, the way I look at it. It's just too convenient that these things are coming together in such a way as they are. But those are the three basic ideas as to what might be behind this. Was the father on antidepressants? Who knows? Will that ever get into the news? We don't know. Was the son radicalized? Will that ever get into the news? Who knows? There's just so much more to these things. You know, you got to get your news from something other than television. You've got to go to the alternative news networks to really get the idea behind what's going on here. Now, will this tragic, I want to play up one of these three ideas. Will this tragic mass murder of Jews in Sydney, Australia at a Hanukkah celebration trigger the next round of war in Southwest Asia? That's kind of what I'm sitting back watching for. I mean, at least, I think the latest count, 15 people have died, including a little girl. What is being described by the Australian officials as an official attack of terrorism. I just love it when they come out with this stuff. Prime Minister, what do you think this was? We think this is an official attack of terrorism. So the Israeli politicians, including Netanyahu and President Herzog, immediately go on this verbal rampage when this takes place, stating that the victim's blood is on the government's hands. Why? Why would they say that? The victim's blood is on the government's hands. Why? Because there's too many guns in the public domain? Oh, is it because these guys had a gripe about the Hanukkah celebration? No. Herzog and Netanyahu said, it's the victim's blood is on government hands for not acting more aggressively against anti-Semitism. You see, Semitism is losing ground around this planet. You see it here in this country. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the Mossad had to execute Charlie Kirk, is because he was starting to turn the tide with all these college students and other people who joined into Turning Point, that perhaps the murder and slaughter of Palestinian babies isn't something we should be supporting. Now, with all of this hubbub about, and I'm sorry for these 15 people who were shot to pieces on this Bondi beach. What about the 2,000 people a week who are being killed in Palestine? 2,000 is the number I saw from reliable sources, from continued bombing, from sniping, starvation, freezing to death. I got a story for you this morning about that, where the babies are freezing to death now that the winter has moved in because of intentional or unintentional flooding in certain areas. All the tents are soaking wet, and with the freezing temperatures at night, babies are freezing to death. No word of that. No, did that make the press? No. There's these 15 people celebrating Hanukkah. So Netanyahu specifically referred to a letter that he sent to Australian Prime Minister back in August, criticizing the government's decision to support a Palestinian state in the UN hearings. I wonder how many other letters Netanyahu sent, because there's a lot of countries that support a Palestinian state. Overwhelmingly, the United Nations members support a Palestinian state. And this support, Netanyahu was saying, encourages Jew hatred now stalking your streets of Australia. So Herzog chimes in, stating that support for a Palestinian state led to this enormous wave of anti-Semitism which is plaguing the Australian society. Now, remember, these guys are scared to death. Whether there's anti-Semitism on the rise or not, and criticism of the genocide is considered anti-Semitism by the Israelis. In fact, there are many traitorous members of our own government in Washington, D.C., and I capitalize traitorous with a T, who believe that criticism of Israel's treatment of the Palestinian slaves, all right, the Palestinian citizens, sorry, as any criticism of that is anti-Semitism. You see where this is going? So the greater Israeli extremist National Security Minister Ben Gvir joined in too. And the three of these are making allegations before authorities have been able to gather any evidence against the shooters. One has been shot by police, the other's in a coma. And there's concern in Tehran now that Netanyahu is going to use this as an excuse to launch a new attack on Iran. And the media and the security contacts in Iran confirmed that the country is on a heightened state of alert, as Netanyahu has repeatedly warned that Israel is prepared to make Iran pay the price for any attack on Israel. And so they are extrapolating, if that's the right word, an attack against Zionist Jews on Bondi Beach on the other side of the world as an attack on Israel. On October 19th, for example, Netanyahu told Channel 14 in Israel that the threat from Iran is far from over and our focus remains on Iran. So the Iranian government released a statement condemning the mass killing, which was rebuffed, of course, by the Israeli Foreign Ministry, which stated that Iran constantly seeks to murder Israelis and Jews around the world. So there are people who will believe that crap. There's people who, when they hear stuff like that, actually believe what the image that they're trying to portray. Now, some Israeli sources reported that Netanyahu's been chafing over his sense that he's been constrained from a follow-up attack on Iran by President Trump. And they added that with Trump tied up in negotiations with Russia to end the Ukraine war, the attack in Australia can be used by Netanyahu as a justification to launch a strike against Iran. Now, Axios had this scoop yesterday, quickly picked up, reported in the Times of Israel, live feed under the headline, White House fed up with PM, referring to Netanyahu. So two U.S. officials, unnamed of course, that always is, told Axios that the White House had sent Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu an angry message over the December 13th Israeli strike, which killed Hamas deputy military leader Raad Saad, calling it a violation of the ceasefire. But according to one senior official, the White House message to Netanyahu was, if you want to ruin your reputation and show that you don't abide by agreements, be our guest. But we won't allow you to ruin President Trump's reputation after he brokered the deal in Gaza. Which does not take into account the deal in Gaza is not going to work the way that President Trump put it together. But the story has it that the White House also is upset over settler violence in the West Bank, and Netanyahu's provocations are unnecessarily angering potential Arab, the official word is Arab partners. I would say Arab investors who don't mind eating their young if they become a part of this Gaza plan. But it's making Trump's administration obsession with expanding this much ballyhooed Abraham Accords impossible. So Axios said this. An Israeli official confirmed the White House was unhappy but claimed the message was mild, that certain Arab countries considered a ceasefire violation. According to the U.S. officials, the White House was unequivocal that Israel had violated the ceasefire. Yeah, when you start killing, when you're still killing the people that you're fighting against, sure, it's a ceasefire violation. Axios also reported, Trump said on Monday that the U.S. is looking into whether Israel violated Israel violated the ceasefire agreement, but stressed at the same time his relations with Netanyahu are good. Oh, that just warms my heart, because Netanyahu is scheduled to meet the president at Mar-a-Lago on December 29th. I wonder if old Bibi will hang around long enough for a New Year's Eve celebration. Anyway, meanwhile, the IDF's war on Gaza continues. Egypt's Al-Ahram Daily reported on the 15th, yesterday, that Israeli warplanes had struck Rafah in southern Gaza while armored vehicles stationed north of the city opened sustained gunfire. In central Gaza, this is from the Egyptian paper. In central Gaza, Israeli artillery shelled areas east of the Al-Baraj, hope I'm saying that right, refugee camp, while military vehicles fired toward the telecommunications building near Abu Hamid roundabout in Khan Yunis. Local sources said at least 2 Palestinians were killed, 6 others wounded over the past 24 hours, medical sources told Wafa. Then you add to that the 5 that were killed by an Israeli strike on a civilian vehicle in Gaza City 2 days ago that injured more than 25 people standing around, and the known total of Palestinians killed by Israelis military since October 11th, ceasefire went into effect, is at least 393 Palestinians with another 1,000 injured. I exaggerated there a little earlier in my report out of emotional concern that they're killing 2,000 a week. They've killed 2,000 since the ceasefire. All right, now I want to get into an update of other things going on, not the least of which is the Ukraine. But I want to talk about this near mid-air collision. I don't know if you heard about it in the Caribbean. The December 12th recording of a conversation between air traffic control and the pilot of a JetBlue passenger plane reporting a near mid-air collision with U.S. Air Force refueling plane flying towards Venezuela without its transponder on is now widely reported. I've explained what transponders are in the past, being a pilot since 1976, 1977, when I got my pilot's license. Transponder is this tiny little piece of equipment inside the airplane that squawks. It squawks a frequency. The frequency is a series of 4 numbers, and 0 to 9. And the squawk code, the transponder code, is given to you by traffic control. And so if I were taking off in an airplane from Salt Lake Airport to points wherever, as I'm talking to ground control before I get to departure, we're talking about where we're going, what's going on. I will be assigned a transponder code. So I set my transponder to 3567, whatever. And every time the radar comes around and hits my plane, that number is going to show up with my identifying characteristics so that traffic control can see me clearly. You know, radar would see me anyway. If I take off and say I'm just going to, fly around the valley, do a touch and go out at number 2 and then go back up to 3-4 right in Salt Lake and land and tie up my plane after a little trip around the valley, the radar is going to see me anyway. And I would be flying at a low enough altitude, I wouldn't be a problem to anybody. But a person who had half a brain in their head would make sure they're squawking a certain frequency. So air traffic control, every time the radar hit my plane, would say where I am and what direction I'm headed, and the fact that I had identified myself and the type of aircraft. And if it's a reporting transponder, it's going to send my altitude and other things back to traffic control, so they can identify me as whether I'm a problem or I'm going to become a problem, or whether I am just general aviation over flying along Wasatch Boulevard, 1,000 feet above the ground, sightseeing what's going on over there. And so traffic control can see me and see me every few seconds. Blip, blip, blip. I'm going to show up on the radar screen, and they're going to know what I'm doing. Now you have a refueling airplane, and they're huge, and they fly at various speeds, but they also have transponder codes given to them by traffic control so that whatever agency, whatever level of air traffic, whether it's some center somewhere or local, whatever, can see this plane, know its altitude, know its speed, and know what kind of a plane it is. So other traffic in the area can be apprised of it. Now, this is what air traffic control said. We almost had a mid-air collision up here. The pilot told air traffic control while his plane was still in the ascent phase after taking off from the island of Curacao to head back to New York. They passed directly in our flight path. They don't have their transponder turned on. That meant that neither traffic control nor the pilot had any advance warning until the plane came into the pilot's sight. Now, the pilot went on to say, and this is reported in the Hill yesterday, "It's outrageous. We just had traffic pass directly in front of us within 5 miles, maybe 2 or 3 miles. But it was an air-to-air refueler from the United States Air Force, and he was at our altitude. We had to stop our climb." Now, according to the JetBlue pilot, the Air Force tanker was headed towards Venezuelan airspace because of all the jets we got flying down there to intimidate the Venezuelan Air Force, that our jets can beat up their jets. And of course, they're sucking fuel like there's no tomorrow, so you've got to have refuelers in the air. Curacao is only 40 miles off the coast of Venezuela. So, a JetBlue taking off from Curacao coming back to the United States is going the other direction. But you can cover 40 miles very fast in a commercial jet. So the U.S. military could not ignore the incident. The U.S. Southern Command informed ABC News, "We are aware of the recent reporting regarding the U.S. military aircraft operations in the Caribbean and are currently reviewing the matter. Military air crews are highly trained professionals who operate in accordance with established procedures and applicable airspace requirements. Safety remains a top priority, and we're working through the appropriate channels to assess the facts surrounding the situation." So until U.S. President Donald Trump revokes his decision to turn the Caribbean into a war zone so that the War Department can carry out Marco Rubio's regime change obsessions, the next near collision might not be averted so successfully by the pilot. Will he wait until a plane full of tourists goes down in flames over the Caribbean before he does what he needs to do, which is to stop this nonsense? 3 more boats blown out of the water, murdered. 3 more boats and their crews murdered by U.S. forces. Yeah, I consider it murder. I know a lot of people don't agree with me on that, and I lose listeners because of that the United States can do no wrong. But this JetBlue on takeoff is probably doing at least 200, 250 knots and a 2-mile separation, crossing your flight path at 2 miles away from you, even 5 miles away from you, at that kind of a speed. You close that distance rather quickly. And it's not like you can duck. I mean, a commercial jet can practice evasive maneuvers. in fear of potential air collision. But it's not like you just duck to miss a right cross coming across your face from some attacker. I have, in my early flight days, and I learned to fly at Provo Airport, some days when there were a lot of students in the air, and this is before it became a traffic-controlled airport. It was just Unicom back then. Everybody's talking to everybody, telling everybody where you're at and what you're doing, so that everybody can look out the window of their airplane and see local traffic. And it could get a little busy, so you might zip down to the Spanish Fork Airport for your touch and goes and whatever else you're doing. Now Provo's a traffic-controlled airport, of course. But you rely on traffic control. I mean, if you're coming into Salt Lake Airport and you're on approach, you pay very close attention to what they're telling you. You can see traffic in front of you. You can see traffic off to your sides. And they will alert you, that you have a 737-800 1 mile in front of you, slow to 240 knots to allow for a 2 mile separation. And then you just go ahead and do it. You don't think twice. You just do what they tell you to do. And then you come in peacefully, safely. So why, which I haven't addressed yet, why was this refueler why did they not have their transponder on? You can't know that. You can't know that it's turned off. Oh, gee, Bob, my co-pilot here, sir. I'm sorry. My co-pilot was asleep on takeoff and forgot to set the transponder code. All right. Now, the strategic situation otherwise around the planet is characterized by all these dramatic tectonic changes going on, these freakouts, these potential breakthroughs at the same time, new dangers. In any case, it's not yet decided, but it seems that the Ukraine crisis could be coming to a conclusion here pretty quick. There were these discussions in Berlin yesterday with Witkoff and Kushner and some other people. Witkoff, as you know, is a billionaire real estate developer. And Jared Kushner, as the son-in-law of the president, is also a real estate developer. What the hell? Are these people over there negotiating the end of the Ukrainian war? See, BlackRock is just sitting back in the shadows, waiting for the end of conflict so they can rush in for their hundreds of billions of dollars of redevelopment programs. And any real estate developer who knows that the values are going to drop like a rock as soon as someone waves the checkered flag, it would only make sense, I suspect, that very successful real estate developers would be in there. Now, apparently, Witkoff has been described as a genius in negotiations, but he's a real estate developer. And it seems that there has been some progress in the sense that Zelensky has agreed now that NATO membership for Ukraine is out. Zelensky has agreed that the Crimea will definitely be part of Russia, which means that the Ukraine will be landlocked, as it always was. And the territorial discussions concerning the Donbass are still negotiating back and forth. And so these discussions are continuing today. And Macron is also in Berlin, as well as Starmer. Are Macron and Starmer in the company of Witkoff and Kushner? So there's a lot of hoopla around that. And we shouldn't be surprised in the next hours that they come up with some kind of a definite agreement. Maybe, they're what, 9 hours? Or 10 hours ahead of us? So that would make it what? almost about, well, dinner time. So maybe in the evening news tonight, there might be some announcement about this. Lavrov in Russia, for his part, is also making additional proposals regarding security guarantees that are given by several countries collectively. So that needs to be seen as a part of the equation here. And there is right now such a large number of plans and counter plans and proposals and counter proposals and red lines that it's kind of impossible at this point to really determine where this stands in terms of any kind of suggested or lasting negotiation. But as I said, it could be over. It could be over this week. A lot of people were hoping that it would be over with by the end of the year, which is barely 2 weeks away. So the reason why this could end in an agreement rather than slaughtering every last remaining standing or lying down Ukrainian casualty has everything to do with the situation on the battlefield. The Russians have made major breakthroughs daily in this last period. The ability of the Ukrainian army to even hold up the front line has been dwindling. So that may be fueling this a little bit, but naturally, if there's an agreement between Trump and Putin, then that would be the heavyweight in the picture here of what we might expect on a continuation of the Ukrainian war. Otherwise, there's this unbelievable freakout that's going on throughout Europe about the implications of this new U.S. national security strategy that I talked about yesterday, especially the part about Europe where it is said totally unmasked and crystal clear that the intention of the United States is to support the opposition to most of the present governments in Europe, aiming obviously at regime change throughout Europe. So there was this speech by Merz over the weekend at the party Congress in Germany where he said the era of Pax Americana is over for Europe. Do you understand that? Forgive me, I'm not trying to be condescending here. I want to make sure you understand that. Merz, as Chancellor of Germany, is saying the concept of Pax Americana, the spreading of peace through the American hegemony and American unipolar control of the planet, is over with as far as Europe is concerned. There is this tectonic shift in the centers of power worldwide, and he urged the Europeans to prepare for a fundamental change in transatlantic relationships. And so the decades of Pax Americana are largely, he said, they're largely over for us in Europe and for us in Germany as well. He said it no longer exists the way we knew it. Americans are now very firmly pursuing their own interests. Oh, thank goodness for that. So the Russian threat requires deeper European unity, including former EU members like the United Kingdom, and so forth and so on, which is why you have this continuation of this fruitless coalition of the willing. And it's a big freak out, and the media, the worst transatlanticists from the Munich Security Conference recently, appeared on some talk shows, freaked out about how the United States government is now supporting the AfD in Germany, and because of that, they can't trust anyone. Now, the AfD, the alternate for Deutschland, I forget the exact German phraseology, but it's the Trumpers. It's the MAGA, make Germany great again, the MGGA. They almost took the chancellorship from Merz, and their party continues to grow in Germany because the German citizens, like they were here a year ago under the MAGA influence, sick and tired of the deep state and what the governments have been doing regarding the rights of their citizens. It's like this, how are you going to keep them down on the farm thing when they saw what happened here in America and it's gaining steam in Germany. And so what Germany, the deep state of Germany, which is the deep state of all Europe, is concerned about is the rise of the AfD, this alternative party, and the statement that the U.S. is no longer regarded as an ally of Europe is now being repeated by a lot of these people. Now, I don't know how much you know about this, the security agreement that the United States put together. I've talked about it for 2 or 3 weeks now. And it essentially says, goodbye. You guys take care of yourselves. We're turning our attention to the Western Hemisphere. And why would the U.S. security concern for the Western Hemisphere suddenly be such an issue that we would let go of our European lackeys? Because of the influence of Iran and Russia and China and India in our hemisphere. And so they keep referring back to the Monroe Doctrine, but the Monroe Doctrine has had a few doctrinal additions made to it, not the least of which is what's it called? The Trump corollary, I think is what it is, to the Monroe Doctrine, to say things like, because the Monroe Doctrine was to stop European or any other part of the world setting up a system, land control, whatever else in the Western Hemisphere that involved the presence of troops to defend their position. And so when it came out from President Monroe, this is an absolute no-go situation. You're not going to do that here. That'll be considered an act of war. Now, that's not the exact verbiage, but that's the idea. And so Trump has extended this beyond military intervention because of the tremendous inroads China has made in Central and South America in the development of these countries in return for trade. And the Chankay port there, which will be bigger than the Long Beach or Oakland or LA, any of these seaports, even or the one that's up in Seattle. And it will become the major trading distribution point for China south of the Rio Grande. And at the same time they're building that, and it's operational now, high-speed rail that snakes its way through the northern end of the Alps over to Brazil, to Colombia, to Venezuela, and into Brazil, so that what is delivered from China can be transported by high-speed rail. What is going back to China, because of trade agreements with these countries in China, can go back to that port and be shipped back to China. Now, that's the whole idea behind a new world security architecture, where the considerations of all the countries involved are taken into account so that everybody wins. So instead of building military bases, you take your swords and pound them into plowshares, and you do business. And as I've often said, and I'm not the only one by any means, China has no history of attacking anybody. They don't want to attack anybody. They've been attacked. The British attacked them. The Japanese horribly have attacked them. The Mongols attacked them. They just want to do business. They just want to do business. They're still devotees of the Confucianism concept, where taking care of your brother is taking care of you. Now, yeah, communism showed up there after World War II. We supported the communist side. We didn't support Chiang Kai-shek, the nationalist, because he wanted a nationalist approach to China. China is ours. Get the hell out of here. Well, you can't control a country that big if you have a nationalist president. As is seen in the frenzy, the anxiety that's going on in Europe now, where you have a nationalist president in the United States turning its back on supporting Europe. It won't be long before we're out of NATO. Trump's biggest obstacle to this now is his Secretary of State, Rubio, who is the neocon's neocon, who wants this war to continue, who wants invasion of Venezuela to continue. What happened? What happened? Well, anyway, the statement that just came out of Europe from Merz, that the United States can no longer be regarded as an ally of Europe, is now being repeated by a lot of people. And what that all means remains to be seen. But in any case, there's this big delegation of politicians from the AFD who went to the Young Republicans gala. What was it called? The 113th Young Republicans of New York gala, where one of the parliamentarians of the AFD spoke at this gala. Now think of what that means. Here is a party that is gaining in membership that they can take over the CDU, the ruling party in Germany now, the Christian Democrats. I don't know how much Christianity is among them, but that's what they're called. And they barely won in the last election over the AFD. Now the AFD is sending parliamentarians, representatives of the AFD in the German government, the parliament government, to a Republican convention in New York City of the Young Republicans. Just think about that. And so Frohmeyer, who is the parliamentarian from the AFD, receives the Alan Dulles Award, which is not something really to strive for, knowing Alan Dulles' record. But he got it. And then there's some others that came over here who got different kinds of awards because they are supporting, much to the embarrassment of the CDU, German-Russian relations. They want Germany to be friends with Russia. The Trumpers, the German, and I don't know, maybe that's offensive to the conservatives of Germany, but that's what they were considered at one time. But it's the right-wing conservative party. And they're pushing for friendship with Putin and Russia and the Russian Federation to reestablish trade between the two that has just fallen to pieces ever since we blew up the pipeline. We, the United States. And then German industry plummeted because now they had to buy natural gas from us coming out of Norway since the pipeline blew up. You know, you stand back with a little perspective looking at this, and not taking into account the innocents who are hurt by this. It's hilarious. So in any case, what this really means is that the United States is being perceived by the German government as actively working on a regime change against the German government. When we invite in and bring in government representatives of a party in a foreign country that are opposed to the existing ruling party, and we bring them in and sponsor them and give them awards, kind of shows where we stand regarding the ruling party. So there's different ways of doing regime change. Well, if you are enacting attempts to do a regime change in another country, is that an act of war? Because there are some German politicians who are saying that. And naturally, there's all this turmoil going on inside the EU anyway. In any case, this is going to remain a major topic for some time. This level of European Union ambassadors. I forget the name of it, but anyway, they invoked Article 122 of the European Union Treaty, which refers to a state of emergency which enables them to take decisions not unanimously, but with a qualified majority. And in any case, the recent meeting of these ambassadors have decided to steal the Russian assets, mostly in Belgium, in the Euroclear institution. But it's not all that unified because everybody knows that the Belgian Prime Minister, De Wever, has warned against it very loudly. This is going to cause Russian countermeasures, which could lead to a financial war that would threaten the entire European Union system. So the point is, it's totally illegal. Even Western experts from a very prestigious law firm in London says this is absolutely illegal to take Russian assets. And if a state confiscates another state's assets, it's a severe violation of international law, obviously, so that the state would occupy by force the territory to some degree of another state, which is an act of war. So according to international law, that is very clearly defined as an act of war. And what the implications will be, we're just going to have to wait and see. But in any case, this law firm, Volterra Fietta, a well-known law firm in London, says it will have long-term consequences. Such a step will haunt the EU for generations to come, and they will, in the end, pay a very high price for it. But it seems that only Merz is really in favor of it. There are 7 states that have come out against it explicitly. Hungary, Italy, Austria, Poland, some of the others. And it just shows the disunity of the European Union. And Russia has already sued the EU, not only for compensation of stolen money, but for the loss of earnings which would have been available had they been able to manage those assets in the marketplace. It's just amazing. So naturally, Rutte, the Secretary General of the UN, of the EU, of NATO, was in Berlin participating in the meeting of this Munich Security Conference. And he made these unbelievable statements. I referred to it yesterday, that Russia is already a threat now to German existence. He says, we are the next goal. We are already in danger, and we must be absolutely clear about the threat, which could lead to a war of a dimension that we have to do what our grandparents and great-grandparents experienced and did. Obviously referring to World War I, World War II, but he leaves out the fact that in World War II, it was not Russia or the Soviet Union that attacked Germany or the West. It was Germany that attacked Russia. He's got this backwards. And they iron out these little nuances as to who threw the first punch, hoping that people have historic amnesia, but obviously not everybody does. So Merz also made this speech at the same Munich CDU conference where he compared Putin with Hitler. He said, if Ukraine falls, Putin will not stop, just as the Sudetenland was not enough for Hitler in 1938. He says Putin will not stop there either, which caused RT to have this long article about the Nazi pedigree of Merz, whose maternal grandfather, Joseph Paul Savigny, served as the mayor in Brilon, which is now in North Rhine-Westphalia, from 1917 to 1937. And he joined the Nazi Party after they came into power in the 1930s. In any case, it's all bringing out this dirt from his past. I mean, just consider yourself maybe involved in some political operation that's taking place, and the people who are opposing what you're doing brings out the fact that your grandfather was a Nazi. Anyway, the role of Merz, which is kind of hanging on a limb right now, is described by Kirill Dmitriev, who sent a message last week to Merz. Dear Merz, you're already out of the game. It's kind of like Trump to Zelensky. You have no cards to play. Shut up. So hopefully that will not be for a very long time, because this chancellor is the worst black rock occupation that Germany has ever had. All right, now there was something more I wanted to talk about BlackRock. BlackRock, what time is it? Holy smoke, what happened? We're at the top of the show. We're at the top of the hour. I was going to talk more about Venezuela. I wanted to talk more about the coalition of the willing. I wanted to talk about what the Zelensky and how that whole thing is falling apart. What else did I have to talk about? Trump designating fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction. What does that mean? Well, you can only imagine where that is going to lead. And then the Palestinians in Gaza that are dying as the Israeli siege turns worse during the harsh winter conditions. See, it's snowing over there. I always thought it was odd when I first saw snow in Israel, in the mountains, but it only makes sense. They're hundreds of miles north of the equator. And the severe weather conditions in Gaza have claimed the lives of 13 people now, including babies who freeze to death, as Israel continues to block the entry of aid that could provide shelter to the remaining 1.5 million Palestinians living in these worn-out tents. I've seen some of these pictures of the tent cities in Gaza. It's just absolutely heartbreaking. And it's a good thing that we're running out of time, so I don't have to go into this, because it's just, I was going to read this report to you. I mean, it brought tears to my eyes, and I decided not to do it. Now, my half off for the care that I render in my clinic is going on for another 2 weeks to the end of the month. You don't have to be in severe pain to benefit from this. I'm going to go into this in more detail tomorrow. Exactly what it means to stop structural interference on the brainstem, and what it could mean to the rest of the body's health profile, whether you have pain or not. And then also we have gift certificates available should you want to be able to pay for something for somebody else. It would include the upper cervical care that I render, as well as something that can be used for supplements. That's still going on. You have to call the office, 801-523-1890, to take advantage of that. And then tomorrow I'm going to get into more of that. I know I have been concentrating really heavily on my health show regarding the heart. And we have been able to help so many people so far now, who come in and get a heart scan, see the condition of their heart in real, true operation, and then they watch their heart change. They can see the function of their heart change right in front of them by just adding a few food-based supplements, not synthetics, food-based supplements to the diet. All right, I'm going to stop the recording here at K-Talk. And I'll need to save that quickly. I think Lowell is there, ready to take up the good work. Lowell, I'm not talking to you. I don't know if you're ready to take over the program right away, or you need some kind of an intro. So I'm going to play what was playing. You can take it from there. I'm ending the stream. Thank you, streamers. If you'd like and subscribe, it just continues to build the numbers. And I will see you all tomorrow on Health Show, 7 a.m. Mountain Time.